Yeah.
Camera speeds.
Okay, so just a few more shows. Let's talk about Designing Women.
Oh yeah, Designing Women. That was special. Dixie loved doing that show, and I loved working with Dixie on it. I worked with Dixie a few times in a play, and also Designing Women, and somehow, you know, you start to do things by instinct. And my instinct was to put her on, to kind of make her mad or put her on. It seemed to work well for the character and for our relationship, you know, because it was a relationship of love and respect and humor, and she had a way of getting a little high on herself, you know, a little too high on her horse, and my character was perfect for just taking her down off the horse. She didn't like that. But I did. I enjoyed it. I suppose it was inevitable that we would, well, maybe not. Something happened with us when we were on camera. Something just clicked. We were very personal to each other, and it was a wonderful relationship. Can't call it a relationship. It's hard to explain. If you're not an actor, it's hard to explain what that's like. The connection between people is very personal, very profound. It's that way in the theater, and it's that way in the film if you happen to get lucky with somebody. Dixie and I just, we didn't cover anything up. We were just who we were and let it ride. And I love working with her.
And you directed on that show. You directed some episodes.
I directed? Oh, never again. The one thing I learned about directing that show is don't try to do this again. Leave these women alone, because they do not need you to tell them what to do. That is out. And I found that in a very positive, even a very rough kind of, for me anyway, experience one day when Gene Smart took me on and told me something I was doing was stupid or something. And it was rough. She was rough. Those four women they really knew what they were doing. The one thing about directing, Designing Women, the one thing about directing them, you did not have to tell them what to do. You just let them alone. Let them alone, because there was no directing. If you start meddling around with trying to tell them how to act, you're in trouble.
And what about Linda Bloodworth Thomason?
Yeah, Linda Bloodworth?
Yeah, what was she like?
Oh, she was like an eager little girl. She was full of enthusiasm, full of positive energy, and really wanting to make the thing work, you know. She was very much a part, very into it, very much a part of the whole process. It meant a great deal to her, and you could feel it. And we were, I suppose this is maybe true with a lot of other shows, we were a real, I don't know how to describe it, group is not the word. We're a company. We were aiming for something, and I can't describe it. Anyway, it was a good experience. What's her name? Jean Smart was tough. She was a singular kind of person. When I say tough, I mean she knew what her character was, you know, going straight for wherever she was going. Delta Burke. Delta was a handful. Delta Burke was always having some kind of a crisis, it seemed. She was in constant crisis with her life, I think. That's the way I felt it. And you had to just treat her a certain way. You had to treat her very carefully and very respectfully. And she was very good at what she did, very good. And she became a favorite with the audience because Delta had she had something about her. Even when we first started, and she was very easy to fool around with. There was something very open and lovable about her, and people loved her. And I got along okay with Delta, especially in the beginning. But everybody, as the years wore on, well, I don't know how to explain it. The wonderful love affair we had with each other in the beginning naturally began to change, you know. It's not that we didn't care for each other, it just that it changes. I think partly you can't maintain something that precious for too long. It's too precious. And also it was new, you know, the show was catching on. Delta. But I loved working with Dixie. I remember once I had bought Dixie a ring, like an amethyst or something, a beautiful ring, and secretly bought it. And I had a scene with her because I had a scene with her where I was going to give her a ring. And I went to a store here, a jewelry store, and bought her a beautiful ring. But I didn't tell her. So the crew was in on this, and everybody in the show except Dixie. And I, and when time came, I was there, and I gave her the ring, and she went, "Oh, that." Well, she was totally stunned, you know. That was kind of fun.
How did Linda get you to take the part?
How did Linda
Get you to...
Well, it wasn't easy because I did not want to do serious television. I was, actually, I had never done serious television except in the early days. And in those days, it's different now, but in those days, now it's different. I was trying to rise above it or something. I was trying to be you know, big time guy and be movies and also long form television. But Linda Bloodworth just kept working on me and persuaded me and sucked me into it. So finally, I gave it. Also, you know, the truth about it is it was fun working with Dixie and working with the women. It was fun. I enjoyed it. And they enjoyed me. I enjoyed my part. And then I was Linda wanted, oh, no, there's another show. What was the other show?
Evening Shade?
Yeah.
But talk about that.
What?
Tell me about Evening Shade, going on to that.
What was that show I did with Bert?
Evening Shade.
Oh, Evening Show, yeah. Yeah, she wanted me to be an Evening Shade with Bert. I guess to kind of hold him down. and I didn't want to. I didn't want to do series television. I was trying to do movies and stuff like that, plays. And I was getting ready to do King Lear in New York. King Lear in New York, and that's a big deal. And I needed money. And she offered me a tremendous amount of money to do Evening Shade. I mean, a huge amount of money to do Evening Shade. And so I needed the money, and so I took it. That's why I took it. But Joyce said something like that, wasn't it? Yeah. And so I worked with Bert and what's his name, the wonderful funny guy, did the acrobatic stuff.
Michael Jeter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Michael Jeter.
Okay.
Michael Jeter.
Who?
Michael Jeter.
Oh, Michael Jeter. Michael Jeter is certainly a wonderful, wonderful actor. Wonderful acrobat. He was amazing. And Charlie
Durning.
Durning, one of the true professionals in our business. Charlie Durning was one of the finest people I ever knew. We went to his funeral over here in the valley. He's one of the finest actors and people I ever knew. And we all worked on the show because we were hired on to hold Bert together, to hold Bert in place. That's really what it was all about. And Bert, you know, he's a likable man. Bert, I like Bert. I wish I could help him because he didn't really know how good he was. And that's a terrible thing when you don't understand that you're really good enough now. Leave it alone. And he was always sort of striving to be better, and he was fine. It drove him terribly. There were times when I just would want to say to him, okay, it's okay, all right. But you don't necessarily do that to somebody. But I remember once, Bert had a scene in front of the fireplace with his daughter or somebody, the woman playing his daughter or somebody. He had a scene in the front of the fireplace. And they just sat down in front of the fireplace. And Bert just talked to her. Just simply talked to her. And he was so human and so wonderful. And I stood outside the scene watching it. And I thought to myself, if I could just tell him how wonderful he is at this moment, that he doesn't need to do anything more than this. He's just fine. But something sometimes drives certain people, actors and all, beyond what they need to do to get going. You know, they don't really understand how good they are. They don't get it. And it's a great lesson to watch somebody trying to be better when they're already there. I mean, we're all subject to that, you know. None of us is perfect. None of us. Bert. Well, he needed somebody to somehow convince him that he was okay right there. That's it. I think we tried to, but everybody has something that drives us where they're missing something. Somewhere they weren't given something they needed at a certain time, and it's tough, very tough.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about Sons of Anarchy.
What?
Sons of Anarchy?
Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, Sons of Anarchy. You know, I really like those people. I mean, I was an odd figure to be on that show, you know? I mean, they were playing all these kind of tough people. I just loved them. I liked them so much. What is the name of the wonderful actress?
Katie Segal.
Yeah, Katie Segal. Her father, Boris, I worked with as director. He was a tough guy. Katie was a real wonderful pro. I really liked Katie. I liked working with her. I appreciated working with her because she was a pro, professional. She was okay. she brought me back to the show to do a final scene. I said goodbye. I was so grateful that I was able to go back for one more shot with her and have that little scene with her toward the end. It was an interesting show. The actors on it were, I love these guys. They're walking around with motorcycle jackets and motorcycles and all. I mean, it was wonderful to be in that group. I loved being in that show. I really did. I drove a motorcycle myself for quite a while. Crazy. Fortunately, I quit before I was killed, but I had a couple motorcycles, and I loved the motorcycles. I loved watching these guys on bikes.
Talk about Kurt Sutter, the producer.
Kurt Sutter? I didn't really know him. I didn't know Kurt. I mean, I knew him, but I didn't. You know, that's it. I knew him, but I didn't. I didn't have any conversation with her in particular. Joyce, Kurt, maybe.
In the beginning only.
Said a few things, but that's it.
Okay. I wanted to
He
ask.
certainly put on a hell of a good show, I'll tell you that. He put on a good show, boy.
Yeah.
That was a good show, and wonderful actors. I love the way they, I love the way they, the costume, you know, I just loved it.
Yeah. Talk about Grey's Anatomy.
Well, you know, the feeling I had, I felt very strongly when I was on Grey's Anatomy. I'd been off the screen for more often than I used to be on it all the time. But to getting old, you don't find the work anymore. You don't get the pleasure of the work as much. And so what I remember about Grey's Anatomy was the pleasure of getting back on a set and the pleasure of being on a movie set with the crew, the camera, looking in the camera. Being with the crew. I loved being in the atmosphere of the crew, of all those people working. And the actors are fine, but it's the crew. Being a part of that family. It's just such a special thing. And it feels like you're back home again. When you get on the set, you're home. You're home. That's where you belong, you know.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite film, movie that you worked on?
I loved working on Into the Wild. I've worked on a few films that I care a great deal about. One of them was the one about the Washington thing.
All the President's Men?
Yeah, All the President's Men. You know, I have a story about my friend Bob Redford. Robert Redford was a friend of mine for a long time. We were a couple of crazy people. He's crazy to begin with, and so my own natural crazy impulse responded to him. So we spent time in Utah with him a little bit, and damn near killed us once. Riding horses and stuff, so anyway, I had a chance to do this They sent me the script, and I turned it down because I thought to myself, I said to Dixie, I think,
Carol.
huh?
Carol.
Carol, yeah, that's right, Carol, my second wife. She'd gone to school with
Redford.
who?
Redford.
Yeah, she'd gone to school with Redford out here. So I turned the script down because there's nothing in it. You don't see the guy, there's nothing there. I'm not going to do it. And Bob Redford came to our house and said, Hal, you got to do this role. I said, nobody will even see you. He says, Hal, you're wrong. Believe me, you're wrong. I said, the guy is in the dark all the time. He said, listen, Hal, people will remember this role more than anything else in the film. Are you kidding, Redford? I'm telling you the truth. They will remember this role more than any Ray. Oh, hell, all right. Okay, I'll do it. Well, he was right. He was right as rain. He understood it, and I didn't, but I was very happy to be part of that. It was a very important film. And Redford, I used to know Redford much better than I do now. I don't know what the hell he's doing now. Because when somebody becomes a very big star, I kind of get a little nervous, and I don't want to intrude on him, you know. So, but I knew Bob very well back in New York when he was starting out, and we had a few crazy experiences. If you want to really risk your life, you go around with Bob Redford. I took my daughter, or my son, I think it was, to Utah, and he took us riding down to southern Utah and damn near killed us. I mean, he's a chance taker. He had us climbing on the edge, me and David, my son. We were above a racing stream in the mountains. I mean, it was one of those where the water's rushing down over rocks. He has got us climbing along the ledge of a cliff, right above the stream, right above the water, and a little ledge about that wide. Me and my son are climbing after him along this, a sure death. I mean, one misstep and you're dead. 40 feet. He's crazy. And he loved fast cars at the time. So finally I said, my son was scared too, and he's no coward. And finally I said, Bob, you go ahead. You couldn't hang on anymore. So we managed to slowly get ourselves back to where it was safe. I thought we were going to die, because it was 40 feet below was the water.
Wow.
And the thing I like about Redford, we told stories about our father, Redford's father and my father. And we would sit in front of the fireplace up at his place up in Utah. We had a good time together. Yep. And I miss those days. I miss I miss that. I really enjoyed it. We talk about our fathers, who both of them were troublemakers. My father was in an insane asylum when I was growing up, and he was a drifter. My father was a drifter. He rode the rails, boxcars. He had no home. He wouldn't stay at a home if you asked him to stay. He wouldn't. He would stay for a night or two, and that was it. He'd disappear. He was out there in the wilderness, traveling by himself, boxcars and whatever. I don't know how he made it. And finally, I managed to corral him up at Sacramento. He used to call it Sacramento. Sacramento. He was not a friendly kind of guy. He was a loner. He was a drifter. And but he was my father. And I tried to take care of him a little bit. He was not a person you could take care of. Toward the end of his life, I kind of corralled him in Sacramento, and he got sick, and I managed to get him to a hospital up there, and he slowed down. And anyway, he ended up, we tried to, we would try to keep him in your home, and he'd disappear. He'd just disappear. You'd find him walking down the road. So finally, we had him, I got him into right down the hill. I could see it from here, where my dad was. It's I don't know what you call it.
Assisted living?
Yeah, assisted living place. They can walk out of it, but assisted living. It's right on Ventura. It's right, I pass it. And he would disappear. He'd be found on the street either laying down or walking around. The police would pick him up. My father, and finally he got sick. Finally, after years, and I had him in a hospital up the valley a ways, and I could see it was really reaching the end, and I had to go back to some place in New York State to do Mark Twain, and I had to say goodbye to him, and he was in the hospital. And I knew I would never see him again, and I knew he wouldn't last. So he was in a bed in a room by himself, and he was near a window, you know, and there was a little arrow, aisle where you could walk around that side of the bed near the window. And he was turned toward the window. And I walked around the bed and leaned over and I said, Dad, I have to be going now. He wouldn't talk to me. He never talked to me. And I said, goodbye, Dad. He said nothing. I leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. He didn't make any sound. He just kept looking toward the window. And I said goodbye and went to the door. I turned around, I looked at him. He never looked at me. I said goodbye, Dad, and I left. And he died a day or two later. And he was a drifter. He and my mother, I never had him. I never had a mother. I never had a mother. I don't know where she is or where she was. She disappeared out here in Hollywood, I know. She left him and got out of the way. There's all kinds of stories you could make up in your brain about that, but nobody in my family ever told me anything. If there was something to tell me, they never told me. I don't know anything about my mother or my dad. My family never talked. That's one of the things that has affected me deeply. I really hate the silence that people maintain in families between themselves by not telling the truth. I hate it when people refuse to tell the truth to each other. And it's one of the reasons that the engines that drives me when I do Mark Twain. Mark Twain told the truth. My God. And I could tell the truth out there with him. But my family, no, they did not. So my dad, I was playing Binghamton, New York. I left, said goodbye to him, went to Binghamton, New York. And the next morning, Dixie called me, actually 5:30 in the morning, something like that. On show day, she called me and said, Hal, darling, I'm sorry to wake you up, but your dad died this morning. I said, I knew it. I knew he was gone. She said, I'm so sorry, darling, but now your agent, we have arranged for the funeral home. We've taken care of all that. We have arranged for the funeral. We have arranged for this. Dixie just arranged everything, you know. And she said, we don't have anything for him to wear. Do you have something, Hal, darling, in your apartment we could dress him in? I said, yeah. I have a suit a blue pinstripe suit I wore as a senator on television, playing the senator. It's in my closet. You could take that. So my dad was buried in my senator costume from the show. And he buried there next to his mother in Lakewood, Ohio. And he loved and took care of him. And he never spoke to me. I mean, he did, but he didn't. You know, he spoke to me, but I found him up in Sacramento one time, trying to take care of him. And my daughter, my oldest child, Victoria, was living up there. She was walking barefoot in New York. She's one of those 1960s kids, fighting me and everything else, fighting the world. She's a Muslim scholar now, lives in Turkey, Istanbul. She's a very fine person, very, very highly respected, but she she took a long journey, this kid, boy. She really did. It was a long, long journey. And anyway, she lived up there for a while, and one night I got Victoria and her grandfather together in a hotel room. And they liked each other. They dug each other. They didn't talk much, but they got it. My daughter and my father.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We only have a couple more questions.
Huh?
We only have a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
What advice would you give an aspiring actor? What advice would you give to an aspiring actor?
To a what actor?
Aspiring.
Aspiring. You better love it. You better love it. Because it's a tough game. My grandson, who lives with me in this house now, is a young actor. He's doing okay. He's serious about his work. I think he's okay. But you gotta love it. You cannot become an actor and think you're going to be like a star. Forget it, kid. The only thing that you can take out of the acting profession is the satisfaction, the pleasure of being an actor and being with a group of actors, because the family, sometimes it's a family that you'll never find anywhere else except on the stage. That's what's so unusual and special about acting. Acting is A lot of people make all kinds of nonsense about it. You know, they have classes and the actor's studio and all this kind of stuff. Mostly it's a bunch of crap. I mean, not really, but I'm sorry, but you know, I mean, acting, for Christ. It's tough. You have to. No, it's a tough game. It's just a tough game. And what you try to find is that part of yourself that is worth giving to other people with a whole heart, to expose yourself. I remember when I was a young actor, one of the hardest things was to be exposing myself, my emotions. Well, that's the game, kid. You can't be afraid of exposing who you are inside yourself. It's not an easy game. It gets easier when you're old. It doesn't matter anymore. But when you're younger, it's tough. You think it's something that maybe people will not like you for or whatever. That's nonsense. That's crap. The one thing that's great about actors is there's nothing special about us. We feel exactly what you feel. We are all a family of people. And we all feel the same things. And to be able to give this feeling to other people, it doesn't seem like much, but it turns out to be valuable. Valuable for a lot of people, because they really need to know they're not alone in the world. They're not alone.
I have one last question. How would you like to be remembered?
I'll be remembered for 10 minutes and then that's it. The thing you have to realize about me, I'd like to be remembered by my friends. And I'd like to be hopefully remembered by my children. And that's going to be tough. They've had a tough time with me. Being a father and an actor is very difficult. We haven't talked about that. It's a mean business. It's a tough business. To begin with, you are a father. And you're an actor. And the two things don't fit together. They don't fit together because you have to be gone most of the time. Times when it's important for a father to be with the little children, you're in the theater. You're out of town. You're not there. You're absent. You're going to be blamed for it. You're going to feel bad about it. You're going to get hurt real bad in the worst way. But that's the game. That's the mean part of the game. You try the best you can. and you try to make a living. And it's tough. You're damn right. Anybody thinks this game is easy is nuts. It's mean. Mean. To try to make a living in this game, to try to be a father, some people can do it, some people do. I don't think too many of them become very successful, but maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm wrong. So anyway, I have, my children have survived me. I have 3 children. My daughter, Victoria, is a special girl, lives in Istanbul, Turkey, is a well-known Muslim scholar, literature. My son, God bless him, had a tough time with me. He lives in Western New Jersey. He's a psychiatrist. He's a psychiatrist, poor guy. God. But he's a good one. I guess he's divorced from his wife, so he knows a little bit about perfection now. He had 2 children. One of them lives right here with me, my grandson, William Holbrook, an actor. He lives right upstairs, he lives right here. He may be walking in on us. He's a fine young man. My son, David, has raised a very fine young man, William Holbrook. He's a good guy. He's been living here for what, Joyce? A year and a half?
2 years.
2 years. The minute he arrived here, he did everything for himself. No trouble at all. I thought, my God, what are we going to do? Try to take care of a kid. I'm no good at, don't have to. He does it himself. He finds his work, he goes on the internet. He came out here, he was working the next day. He worked on the crew, worked on the crew for a month or 2 or 3 or 4 months, and then he got a little job in acting. Now he's working. You know, he's not making a fortune or anything like that, but he's a fine young man and he's good. He did Romeo in the theater in the Valley a little while ago. Did a good job. So I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of the fact that he knows how to lead his own life and doesn't depend upon me to be something special, because I'm not. But I'm proud of him. And my daughter, my youngest child, Eve Holbrook, lives in Brooklyn and is a yoga teacher, and rather well thought of, I think. Very well, I think of her very highly, but I think she's very highly thought of. She's pretty high up in the echelon of yoga teachers. And she is married. Got married to a guy who lives in Denmark. Danish guy. What are you gonna do? I can't go to Denmark. I'll die on the way to get there. So, but I've been to Denmark once. Played Mark Twain there. What a European tour, but I'm not going to go again. That's enough. So she's married to him, And Victoria lives in Istanbul, and David has got a lovely girlfriend who lives in New Jersey. And he's okay. He's all right. My little granddaughter, I have 2 grandchildren. My granddaughter, watch out for her. She's going to take over the world. She is. Nothing is going to stop this kid. I wouldn't want to stand in the road and get in the way of her. She's, unfortunately, I'm afraid she's going to become an actress. I'm so afraid I'm going to have a grandson and granddaughter as actors. What can I do? So my grandfather and my great-grandfather from New England, these people who came to this country in 1635, that settled there, probably burned a lot of people at the stake, they would be horrified. Horrified to think that I have become an actor and my children have become actors. But such is life.
Absolutely. Well, those are all of our questions for today.
Okay.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to speak with you.
Thank you, dear. Thank you for everything.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Truly.
And thank you on the other side of the camera there.